Hello and welcome in to the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from Austin, Texas is Mike Craven, the senior writer at Dave Campbell's. Craven, we're going to have Jay Arnold with the Aggie War Pod on in the back half of this episode to do a full preview of Texas A&M Notre Dame. That is obviously the marquee game of the week, but let's do our initial thoughts on A&M Notre Dame first and a little truncated preview before we go to Jay Arnold in the back half of the show. So it's number 16 A&M versus number 8 Notre Dame in South Bend, 6:30 p.m. NBC. The Fighting Irish are favored by 6.5. My initial take on the A&M side for this, Craven, is I think this is where we find out, is A&M an SEC championship contender or are they Texas 8-4, but a tough Texas 8-4?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Marcel Reed sounds like he's fine. Mike Elko talked about that today in his Monday press conference. So
first reported by his dad.
Crisis averted there. I'll let Jay get more into the X's and O's and how A&M needs to win that game. But from a narrative sports writer standpoint, this could do a lot for Mike Elko's tenure. Like this could be a plant in the flag, kind of when you look back, an origin story type win, a lot like that at Alabama game was for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. Like you knew something had changed when they went and won that game. Notre Dame may not be a national championship contender, but it's a very good football team. South Bend's a tough place to play. If you can go in there with a relatively young quarterback and win that football game, I think it really just changes the perception of what A&M is and maybe opens up the conversation to like take them seriously. Cause I think right now it's sure, they're super talented. We like what their head coach is doing, but it's Texas A&M. The football will be pulled out from under them like it typically is. You win this football game. And much like that whole, like Texas will always blow it went away. I think that kind of starts to go away from A&M if they can win these type of football games.
I think I have the most question, ironically, about Mike Elko's defense in this one because, look, Notre Dame, the offense in the first week against Miami, for some godforsaken reason, gave C.J. Carr, the quarterback, more carries than Jeremiah Love, the preseason Heisman contender. So I think now that their offensive coordinator is going to force feed him the ball, give it to him 25 to 30 times. And can Mike Elko's rushing defense hold up? Because they let Robert Henry at UTSA have 177 yards and then, 22 points allowed versus Utah State.
Yeah, I do think the offense has been the better unit through 2 games. Marcel Reed's been super impressive. You've put on tape that he can be a adequate passer, an above average passer, and those new wide receivers have been incredible. That's got to strike fear into what is a very good Notre Dame secondary. So I think it's kind of weakness on weakness and strength on strength going into this one. Like the Notre Dame offense has been lagging behind, but what is the A&M defense? Notre Dame's defense is going to be solid. A&M's offense has been explosive so far. So it should be a really good game, exciting game, definitely the best game of week 3. And excited to hear what Jay thinks about how A&M goes about winning it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they try to win against Notre Dame like they won against UTSA and Utah State with Marcel Reed slinging the ball around, or if they start to lean on Ruben Owens and Le'Veon Moss. Because there's part of me that thinks, like, is Mike Elko the first coach to ever, like, kind of hide his offensive scheme by throwing the ball all around the yard? Normally, offenses run the ball because they're trying to keep it vanilla before they really unlock the passing game. Mike Elko might be doing the reverse of that before he does what he really wants to do and just Kansas States you to death.
I guess the obvious plan here would be you gave Marcel Reed the first 2 weeks, one, to build confidence and continuity with his new wide receivers, but also to put it on tape now that it's a big boy game in a hostile environment. You go back to what you do best. You run the football. You lean on Le'Veon Moss. I'm just wondering if they're kind of approaching this like Greg Maddux used to approach pitching, where you pitch backwards a little bit, right? Where it's, throw some balls early, get the quick passing game going, get Marcel Reed involved, get those wide receivers feeling good, break some tackles, make some big plays, and then you hammer them with the run game. Fascinated to see what Colin Klein kind of decides to do there.
Do you have an early lean of what you're thinking in this game before we talk to Jay? Because my early lean is A&M wins because I picked A&M's over. But in my heart of hearts, I also kind of think this might be an A&M close loss.
I lean Notre Dame to win. Probably lean A&M plus 6.5 just because, the Aggies have been better offensively. Elko's going to dial some stuff up. And Notre Dame kind of feels one-handed. I just don't know if you have to respect the passing game as much in an Elko defense that doesn't have to worry about that. Maybe they're better against the run there. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be kind of an ugly game, honestly. But there's been a lack of these on-the-road big wins for A&M. And until they can go do it, it's hard for me to bet on it happening.
Yeah, I think I'm going A&M plus 6.5, but a loss. So kind of right there with you. Again, guys, full preview of this game with Jay Arnold coming up in the back half of the show. Let's run through the rest of the weekend slate for the Texas teams. Houston hosts Colorado Friday at 6:30 on ESPN. Friday Night Lights going on. Houston is favored by 5.5 points. The Cougs are 2-0 for the first time since 2018. It doesn't matter who they played.
Yeah, it does not matter who they played. I'm not sure they're going to see that great of a football team on Friday. Like, what is Colorado? Ryan Staub came in, threw for 2 touchdown passes last week in their win against Delaware. Put up a good fight against Georgia Tech in the first game of the season, but not as explosive last year. Obviously, you don't have a Heisman Trophy winner, and you don't have Shedeur Sanders, who, say what you want about Shedeur, really good college quarterback. And so not as explosive this year. Wide receivers aren't as good. Houston's the better team. They're at home. They're favored. I think Willie Fritz has a pretty giant coaching advantage over Deion Sanders. When it comes to the finer points of the game, timeouts, clock management, that kind of stuff, I trust Fritz in those moments if this is a close one. This is a big one for Houston because you go and you win this game, you beat Deion Sanders, the city of Houston starts to raise their eyebrows a little bit and maybe gets behind Fritz. They're going to have a big, crowd. So it feels like a big one for Houston to kind of hold on, capture momentum, and prove that they are starting to turn a corner.
Yeah, Colorado might be 3-9 this year, but they still have the mystique of last year's team because it's early enough in the year.
And the casual fan can kind of, they beat Deion Sanders. Let's go check them out when they're playing. It can be something that maybe draws in some Houstonians that don't always pay attention to the Cougars. Year 2 of the Fritz era feels like a game because they can start 4-0 if they win this football game going into that Texas Tech game that's at home. And that becomes, there's a lot of Texas Tech alums in Houston. If both teams are 4-0 and Big 12 contenders going into that game, it'll be a massive crowd. So this feels like a big one for Houston. I trust their defense, I think, against this Colorado offense. It doesn't feel all that explosive. So it comes down to if Connor Wegman can stay efficient and if Dean Connors in that run game can continue to have success that they've had against lesser opponents.
Well, that Colorado offense is on its third-string quarterback, and I don't know if it's because of health. I think Caden Salter and Julian Lewis are just inconsistent right now, and they put in Ryan Staub.
I think that's what it is. Trying to light a fire under those other two. One of them's a true freshman. Lewis is a true freshman. Probably a lot of him to come, or a lot to ask of him to come in and start right away this early in the season. Caden Salter, a Texan, former solid player in Texas high school football. I don't think was very good last year at Liberty. Hasn't been so good so far against Colorado. So you got to like Austin Armstrong's defense's chances here. Now, I'm still curious what that secondary looks like when it's tested against a solid passing attack. I'm just not sure Colorado is that. The stereotype of Colorado the last couple of years is if they can do anything, it's to pass the ball. It sounds like they want to be a little bit more old school, run the football, play some defense to win games this year. And that's like Willie Fritz's theme music. And I just don't think you're going to out Fritz in Houston if you're Colorado.
So are you not a Ryan Staub believer at all on this game? Because Deion is. Because Deion's talking about how the student section's changing his name and talking about a former walk-on, which I don't know if Staub's actually a walk-on or not, but a third stringer going into play and playing well. Deion's like, I cried during the movie Rudy. So he's basically comparing Staub to Rudy.
Are you a Rudy? Do you like the movie Rudy? Did you grow up a Rudy fan?
It's not my favorite.
Can't stand that movie. I think it's dumb.
Why can you not stand it?
It's just
because I hear people have this.
It's not real. It's not.
Okay.
It's not real. Like it's not a real thing, right? It's propaganda, and I just don't. I also don't. I don't like any of those kind of corny feel good sports movies. I guess. Give me like the Remember the Titans. Like a good sports movie is solid, but the corny kind of propaganda-y sports movies don't do it for me. And I'm a Notre Dame hater. Like Duke basketball, Notre Dame football do nothing for me. Hate them. Absolutely hate them.
I would argue the football scenes in Remember the Titans are less realistic than the entire Rudy movie is.
That's probably true, but the characters are more likable because they're cooler.
That is true. Left side, strong side.
You wouldn't want to hang out with Rudy. I wouldn't want to hang out with Rudy.
I met Rudy one time. He did an autograph signing near my neighborhood, and I went.
You probably fell asleep halfway through it. Joe Montana doesn't respect Rudy. I don't respect Rudy. That's where I'm at with it.
Are you a believer in Connor Wegman in the Houston offense yet? Because, 35 points in the Rice victory looks nice, but they also did not have a touchdown until the last minute of the first half. They had 0 points.
Yeah, I guess if the defense is going to stay this good, and again, they played Rice and Stephen F. Austin, so we're going to learn a lot more about them. I'm just not sure it's going to be in 4 of the next 5 games. Does the offense need to be great if the defense can handle Colorado, Oregon State, Oklahoma State, Arizona? Like those are 4 of the next 5 games. Texas Tech, the outlier there. The Red Raiders are going to be the first test. So I don't think Connor Wegman and this offense have to go score 40 plus and be that explosive. They could run the football. They can use play action. They can play field position. They can kind of do it dirty. Like I don't think they need to come out and be gangbusters. They did seem to hit some big plays, and that's the Slade Nagel special. Is like it's not an explosive offense, quote unquote, down to down, but they do hit explosive plays because they set it up like a boxer sets up a knockout punch. And so if Dean Connors and those running backs, it sounds like they're going to get maybe 1 or 2 of them back healthy to load that stable up. If they can be good in the run game, I think all of a sudden Steven Johnson and those wide receivers, a couple of the transfers can be explosive. They have a really good tight end. So for what I think they need the offense to be to have a successful season, I do trust Wegman and company to be that.
Who's the Houston running back that hurt his hand by slamming it in the car door?
Burnett, right? Was it?
That's honestly super relatable.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Been there, buddy.
Yeah. 100%. 100% been there. I'm a new father, so I'll be there again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of your new fatherhood, you can watch this next game during Lucy's nighttime feeding window.
Yeah, I love it.
Texas State travels to Tempe to face Arizona State at 9:30 p.m. You can catch this game on TNT or HBO Max. I think Arizona State 15.5 is my mortal lock of the weekend because Arizona State is so mad about the Mississippi State game, and Texas State is coming off an emotional win over UTSA. So it is 2 programs that had complete opposite results last week. And then also Kenny Dillingham's speech after the loss has me ready to run through a brick wall. So I think Arizona State will be too.
Yeah, excited to watch this game. 2 of the best young football coaches in college football who I'm sure we're going to be watching coach big-time football games for decades to come. So both offenses exciting, going to put up some points, probably lean over here. That line does look really big because you're right. It does seem you almost wish Arizona State had won that football game if you were Texas State. But coming off the loss and how it happened, by the way, if it's close, if this game's like 36-34 late, Texas State better be running a post pattern because Arizona State late in games does not stop them. I don't understand. It happened against Texas. It happened again last week against Mississippi State. I mean, live by the blitz, die by the blitz, I suppose. But man, there's a time and a place for it. Loved what I saw from Texas State last week, and it feels like free money. You go into Tempe. If you get this upset, you're in the South Florida conversation of college football playoff. You can go run through the Sun Belt, which had a couple key injuries for some guys that they're going to face along the way. If you can have a win against UTSA, if you can have a win against Texas State, you beat James Madison, right? Like you're in that. You have an opportunity. It's in front of you if you're the Bobcats. But this is a tough one. It's going to be late at night. Arizona State is a lot like Texas State, kind of a mirror image with probably better athletes. And so you're going to have to get some turnovers. You're going to have to hope that loss kind of just took the air completely out of Arizona State, and you can like capture them on a low moment, and that they don't rebound from the loss. But anytime you're a 15.5 point underdog, you're going to need some things to break your way to win it.
I think what I would do is wait for this line to shrink a little bit. I think it's going to move towards Texas State's side, maybe, and then I would hammer Arizona State. 15.5 is pretty large.
It is, especially for an offense that's going to score points. Like you don't imagine this thing's going to be 10 points for Texas State or something. It's just, they won that football game against UTSA, but the defense didn't look stellar, especially in the second and the third quarter. Like once the dam broke after the first quarter, the Roadrunners went up the field pretty good, ran the ball pretty well. You'd imagine Sam Levitt's, more athletic than Owen McCown, obviously, so they're going to have to deal with his legs. This is going to have to be another shootout that Texas State wins and hopes they get a couple turnovers, because their defense can be opportunistic, as we saw against the Roadrunners, even if they can't stop from a down-to-down standpoint.
I do think that Arizona State offense and Sam Levitt is missing Cam Scatabo very, very badly, though.
Yeah, 100%.
Which also, it's fun to see NFL fans finding out about Cam Scatabo now. When he came in, did you see him in the Giants game? He had the loudest, 3 yards rushing performance I've ever seen.
Is that because the crowd did the Scattaboo thing or whatever after each carry? Or?
That, and also he headbutted 3 guys on that 1 3-yard run. Basically, he literally, I've never seen a guy lead with his head more than Cam Scatabo.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch a lot of NFL in week 1. My Saturdays are so busy. It feels like Sundays are here, hand me the baby. I'm sorry that you had to take all day Saturday on this duty by yourself type of deal. So probably not going to catch a lot of NFL football this year. If I'm Texas State, I guess I worry about Jordan Tyson in that passing game. Just how they're able to stop. I don't think Texas State's going to be able to stop Arizona State for any stretch of this game. So I guess if you're the Bobcats and you're hoping for an upset, it's just, Brad Jackson, Bo Sparks, big plays. Hope you get Lincoln Perry in the run game going and just shoot at them and get some turnovers. They were close to winning it last year.
Yeah, Bo Sparks should be running a deep post 99% of the time.
Yeah.
That's the recipe for success. All right, let's go to the American Athletic Conference now. North Texas hosts Eric Morris's old team, Washington State, at 2:30 p.m. on ESPNU. The Mean Green are favored by 4.5, and Craven, I don't know if you've seen this, but Washington State fans are finding that Eric Morris quote from coaching school about the Pac-12 being the old Mountain West. The burners are starting to dig it up.
Yeah, that's kind of the underlying thing here. I was joking with Kev. We had that conversation. I kind of shut down of is the Pac-12 going to be G6 and just the terminology there. It is, right? Like when Boise State is the belle of the ball in your conference, you are a G5/G6 conference. But it has the chance to be the best G6 conference and the one that sends a team to the playoff most often. And games like this are going to set the tone for that. Texas State UTSA is going to be a big one for bragging rights between those two conferences. So is a game like this. Obviously, a lot of familiarity between Washington State and Eric Morris and vice versa. A big win last week that kind of showed a little bit of an evolution for the Mean Green. To be favored at home with what is going to be a big crowd, I don't think it's going to be a sellout, but it's going to be a big crowd. You didn't have a great start offensively last week, and so you feel like Mestamaker and that offense is going to give it a good game. This is one of those, is this defense really better? Like an opportunity to really sell to your fan base. We can play both sides of the ball. We're an approved defensive unit. We don't have to win 52-49. A lot of times, we talked about A&M and kind of the ball getting pulled out from under. It feels like North Texas is another one of those programs that in the last 20, 30 years, every time they're about to turn a corner and really get the city back in it and get the fan base back in it and get the students into it, they just lose that football game. Winning this one and setting up that showdown with Army to kind of start conference play, I think would be massive for the Mean Green.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you because last year, I believe it was the North Texas Tulane game, and Tulane raced out to like a 20-point lead, and then actually it ended up being a one-score game. But by the end of this game, the stands were completely empty. Like there was maybe 1,000 people there. And Eric Morris was asked about it in the post game, and he basically said, like, if you build it, they will come. And I'm a believer in that. And was like, it is, I think he knows that North Texas keeps having these games where they can win back the fan base, and it doesn't happen, like you mentioned. And this is one of those opportunities. So I think this is a huge, huge game for not only the season, but for his tenure.
And Washington State's not a great football team, but it still has the original Pac-12 member aura to, it feels like you're winning, you're beating a team that the fan base has heard of, right? It's not like Western Michigan or Lamar, right? It's a nice logo. It's a good notch on the belt. And I think Morris needs some of those wins. Like, what is his signature win so far at North Texas?
Losing by 4 to Memphis.
You need a couple of those. You got to close a couple of those out. And for the first 2 years, you could blame the defense and go like, hey, the defense stinks. We got to get some changes over there. We need to get better personnel. Well, it's year 3. You're on your second defensive coordinator. He brought in half of his guys. You're at home. You're favored. Win. Like, go win the football game.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with you. I think, are you going to take North Texas in this one? Do you think they do it?
I'm taking North Texas. I'm not going to mess with any points and how big they're going to win it. It may be like last week against Western Michigan, where you like have your eyes covered for most of it, like worried that this is going to go bad for North Texas. But I think it's a new day. I like the complementary football. I think they got, with Morris on one side and Cassidy on the other, you're going to be fine schematically in most matchups. They're the better football team. Like, they should go win this one.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think my leg is fully wound back, and I'm about to kick the absolute crap out of the football, and I just hope it doesn't get pulled out from under me.
Yeah.
Because I'm basically like the kids on College Game Day right now, trying to kick the 200,000-yard field goal.
I was thinking like Peanuts, Charlie Brownish.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. How mean would that be if on the College Game Day someone pulled it out from under them?
Surprised that hadn't happened.
Yeah. All right. Let's go run through the rest of the slate. Not as big of games here, but still some interesting storylines. Like in Austin, where Arch Manning's throwing face is now the dominant storyline. Texas versus UTEP, 3:15 p.m. on SEC Network. Steve Sarkisian today in his press conference said, I've never filmed one of y'all going to the bathroom, so I don't know what type of faces you make when you go potty. And you could tell he was rehearsing that one. He liked it. He thought he killed that one. Yeah. I personally didn't get it that much. I mean, I respect the effort.
Yeah.
The execution was a little lackluster.
The first thing I thought about was the like Joker meme, where he's like doing comedy or whatever. That's kind of the first thing I thought of. You were a former quarterback or are a former quarterback. I mean, is it like pooping? Is that because I guess that was the analogy it felt like he was drawing was, Arch makes faces when he's throwing. I don't go and film y'all when you're in the bathroom, presumably because you make faces while you're pooping. I guess I didn't get quite exactly what he was trying to draw a comparison between.
Yeah, I think he's seen the online chatter of it looks like Arch is taking a dump when he throws the ball.
Okay.
Which is kind of why I was saying the execution was a little off, but I respected the effort.
Sure.
The face he makes looks like he is in pain. And when I used to throw, I was kind of in pain after I threw it and saw where it went, not as I was throwing the ball.
Right.
But also, like, we are kind of far removed from Peyton and Eli to where people might have just forgotten about the Manning face.
Yeah, Manning face is a real thing.
This is what they do. It wouldn't be such a big deal if he wasn't dirting balls all the time.
Yeah, if he was hitting more targets, it would just be a funny face meme. I mean, another get-right game for Texas. UTEP not going to offer much resistance. You mentioned it on the recap show when we kind of talked about this next game. But former 5-stars in the same recruiting class, Malachi Nelson, Arch Manning, kind of interesting. Would have won a lot of money if you had predicted that would be a UTEP at Texas situation there in 2025. So I guess if you're the Miners, you're just trying to get out of here healthy with your check, show a few things, build a little confidence. when you're playing football at UTEP, I think this is a cool experience, getting to play in front of 100,000 people in Austin and all that kind of stuff. But there's bigger games ahead for the Miners that are going to matter a lot more for Scotty Waldron and company. You just want to make it an okay experience where you get out of here without being in a mass unit so you can go play conference football. And if you're Texas, it sounds like Sark just wants to see the little things get better. Less penalties, that just the knuckleheadness, and he mentioned, I think it was an important point, like the human nature. You go from playing Ohio State to playing San Jose State, there's going to be a little bit of a let off. But it seems like there was a little bit of sloppiness in Ohio State too. So to me, it's just a bunch of young guys, a bunch of new faces figuring it out. And this is another opportunity to figure it out more before you get into SEC play.
I think it's also a big time get right game for Ryan Wingo and Colin Simmons. Sark talked about both of them in his press conference, how Colin Simmons is probably the most penalized player in the nation right now. You talked about it in the last podcast, pressing, trying to do too much, trying to be the best player in college football. And I think Ryan Wingo is kind of doing the same thing. I think he hears a lot of the outside noise and chatter of how he's supposed to be the next like Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, and he's trying to do too much.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for just a big get-right game for Texas, and I'm looking for a big stay healthy from UTEP. Big storylines in this one. Mm-hmm. All right. Texas Tech versus Oregon State is 2:30 p.m. on Fox. Texas Tech is favored by 23.5. This is my don't screw this up game of the week because that Utah game next week is looking mighty nice. Cannot wait for that.
Yeah, the kickoff times were announced today. 10 a.m. local kick time, Texas Tech at Utah. A beautiful draw for the Red Raiders. Did not want to play that at night. Don't even want to play it in the afternoon. Get it at 10 a.m. local time out there in Utah. That was a big get. But yeah, we've talked about it. McGuire has had a couple stumbles early in non-conference play against teams that they're better than. They are much better than this Oregon State football team. You're at home. You can't look ahead and have this one shoot yourself in the foot because, as you mentioned, it's all in front of you in week 4 at Utah.
I think this is the first Texas Tech game I'm mildly paying attention to because the first 2 games are just against teams that are outclassed. This one is more in line of the Wyoming or the Washington State of like, yes, you are better than this team, but they can get you.
Those were on the road, though.
True.
I think being at home, they've been good at home. If this was at Oregon State, I'd be more worried. But since it's at home, maybe these are famous last words. You got to go. I mean, you got to win this one. I think they win it comfortably. That offense has been incredible.
Oh, it gets real uncomfortable if they don't win this game.
Oh, so that would be a disaster.
Yeah, I think they're going to be just fine and win this one. All right, moving on in the Big 12, Baylor versus Samford, 11 a.m. on ESPN Plus. I just got on my high horse in the last podcast about Baylor and SMU playing a big time non-conference game, and now Baylor's taking basically a bye week against Samford.
I mean, they did play Auburn and SMU to start it, so I think they deserve it.
It's fair. They deserve this one.
Sawyer Robertson starting to get some Heisman steam. Put up some big numbers. Get healthy. Don't play past the third quarter. Get a lot of guys out there defensively, and kind of use this. If I was Dave Aranda, this is what I would do. And I'm not a coach, so this is probably stupid. But I would stand in front of my defense. It'd be like, guys, everybody in here is going to play in this game. Show me if you want to play after it. Like we have been so bad. There is no job safe. If you want the job and you want more snaps, go play well in this game. Go play hard in this game when a lot of guys probably aren't. And then roll with those guys because how much worse can it get?
If Samford scores 21 points, that's a disaster.
Man. Yeah. Be dominant. Just be absolutely dominant defensively. That's what you need this week.
Okay, TCU plays Abilene Christian, 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus. This was the game I accidentally previewed 2 weeks ago because I didn't know there was bye weeks that early.
Yeah, it's because they played that silly Monday game against Jordan Hudson's Tar Heels. TCU, it's kind of weird. I mean, it's kind of been a weird start to the season. You don't play at home until September 6th. September 13th. Sorry. But they looked really good against North Carolina. I'd imagine they look good against Abilene Christian, and all sets up that TCU SMU game in week 4. It should be really awesome and meaningful for both programs for sure.
Yeah, an interesting note here, Abilene Christian Wildcats. That's also what Josh Hoover dresses up as Twitter and Instagram would have you believe. That is the weirdest storyline ever, of just out of thin air that Josh Hoover's a furry.
Yeah, too much time in the offseason. It's just the offseason is too long. That is the lesson there.
Yeah, that is a peak Twitter.
And social media is a bad place.
Yeah. Those are my favorite type of rumors, though, just out of complete thin air. Like, where did this come from?
When they're so outlandish that you're like, is this true?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, the AI in Photoshop has gotten too good now.
Too good, for sure.
Okay, SMU plays Missouri State 2:30 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. SMU is favored by 27.5. And moving on now to Rice. I'm just kidding. I mean, whatever.
Yeah. I guess a defensive bounce back game, like we were talking about Baylor. You're better than this opponent. Go prove it. If you're leaky here, like sirens, alarm bells really go off. Also, if you're the scheduler for SMU, how in the world are you going to Missouri State? You don't see any of the big time programs do that. You're no longer in the American. You're not a G5. You just went to the college football playoff. Don't do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was definitely. Did they make this game when they were in the American?
Had to have.
They probably scheduled it when they were in the WAC, honestly. But home and home for 2025 and one for 2008.
You know, if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that you can schedule on the fly, and I wish college football would do that more. I guess it would get rough because you would have to like wait for the other, it's like musical chairs or whatever. But when these things are scheduled so far in advance, you just lose the opportunity to have some really cool matchups if you were able to kind of be more flexible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Rice versus Prairie View A&M, 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus. I mean, this would be the quickest I've ever seen a first game win goodwill go out the window if Rice lost this game, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, it seems like an important one because you're at Charlotte the week after that, so you could start 3-1 before you get into the teeth of the American schedule. I think that would be great for momentum, perception, recruiting, all that stuff that is so important in year one. You can't lose these type of football games and sell your fan base and sell recruits on like upward trajectory. So it's like UTEP last week against UT Tyler. Like, go win this football game, be better than this team, and kind of move on to the next one.
The final game we got on the docket, UTSA versus Incarnate Word, 2:30 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Something interesting I found doing box score watching. Owen McCown has 340 yards on 75 passing attempts, and Robert Henry has 336 yards, just 4 less yards on 33 carries.
Yeah.
He leads the nation in rushing.
Yeah, who said running wasn't an efficient football play? Take that, nerds. UTSA is lucky this isn't the normal UIW passing offense, or at least it hasn't shown itself to be so far, because there are some UIW offenses in the very recent past that would light that ass up. Like, it would be a dangerous week for the Roadrunners. I don't think UIW is that football team. Maybe I'm taking the Nichols game too far in account. They've come a long way since then, and that was just a blip in the radar. But from what I saw from Torres in that offense in that game, I think UTSA is safe here. They're going to have the advantage running the football, obviously. If you can't like want to be motivated in playing this football game, then you've probably like, that's a bad sign, you know? And so you're 0-2, you just lost a rivalry game. You should want some payback and some feel good feelings. Like it seems like one of those like culture locker room, go take care of business type games. If this one is closer than it should be, right? Like say it's 27-21 in the fourth quarter, and it just looks like UTSA's just kind of, day walking along like that. I just think that's a bad sign. It just feels like a narrative game here.
I definitely agree. All right. That is our slate for week 3. Oh my, the season's already flying by. I'm not going to do it. We're only in week 3, but it goes fast. So don't blink, guys.
Yeah. It's like being at an amusement park where you like wait for the ride for an hour and a half and the ride's 2 minutes long. Like that's football season.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half wait of conference realignment and existential dread. Lawsuits, and then a 30-second ride of SMU Baylor and Texas State UTSA. And it's amazing. This is what we do it for. That's what we endure the long off season for.
That's right.
But just enjoy it. All right. Now let's do a full Texas A&M Notre Dame preview with our good friend Jay Arnold. Here's our chat with Jay.
It is now time for our special guest of the week. You know Carter, you know Craven. The other voice you'll hear on this podcast is a barbecue eating machine who won't shy away from a road trip or an off-key rendition of Creed. The former fighting Texas Aggie defensive lineman arrived in College Station as a 3-star prospect back in 2013. He now resides in Houston, but his heart never left. Ladies, gentlemen, one-eyed reveille, I present the one, the only, Jay Arnold.
I appreciate the intro, Mike. You know, I have a reveille tattoo. Maybe it's time to put an eye patch on that.
It does look.
Where is the tattoo?
It is on the thigh. It is actually it's a home field design that I got back in the day. But yeah, I think an eye patch would be perfect. A perfect addition.
Jay, obviously a big game this weekend. Texas A&M goes up to Notre Dame. The Aggies, since they've joined the SEC, not great on the road, specifically not great against good teams on the road. Don't think that they have a win over a road team that finished with 9 or more wins since 2012 when they beat Alabama. What would it mean for this program to not only beat Notre Dame, who was in the national championship game last year, but to beat them in their house and kind of get that monkey off their back?
Yeah, it'd be massive. And I think this is something that Mike Elko touched on in his presser on Monday was yes, they went on the road and they beat Florida last year to kind of get over that road hump. But now it's taking the step being an elite team on the road. And you look at the history of A&M in the SEC, it's been a struggle, right? It's been a tough ask to go on the road and beat those teams. And, you know, that's never an easy task, but it has to be something that you do if you want to go from good to great. So beating Notre Dame on the road would be massive for this program. I think it injects a bunch of enthusiasm into the fan base immediately. Like, I think they start getting hyped up. Kyle Field becomes a better environment. I think it also builds confidence in the team, right? Like, yes, you have won the first 2 games of the season, but this is by far the biggest test. It is the first road test of the season. Going on the road and beating a team that just played for a national championship in their house would be, I think, about as big of a momentum gainer as you could have this early in the season.
And Jay, you've got your finger on the pulse of Texas A&M Twitter. What is the fan base's confidence level, you think, in this game?
It's a little mixed. I think there's been some concerns on the defensive side of the ball early in the season. I don't think they've been as consistent there as they would have liked. But at the other side of it, you know, A&M has taken what seems to be a massive step forward in being an explosive offense so far. I think they're top 5 in the country in plays of 20 or more yards at this time. Now, is that going to keep up against a much better defense in Notre Dame? That's the question they have to ask. But I think there's definitely some optimism heading into South Bend, I guess would be the word.
In game 1 against UTSA, you saw Marcel Reed throw the ball a lot and the running game kind of take a back seat. Against Utah State, it felt like the game plan was more in line with what most of us thought this A&M offense would look like, where, yeah, we saw some passing, but the run game was more involved. What do you think the game plan is going into Notre Dame?
It's tough because this is going to be a very good defense. Obviously, you have the new defensive coordinator there in Chris Ash replacing Al Golden. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, what kind of wrinkles Notre Dame has in there that may be different from what A&M saw last year. I think A&M at its core would like to establish the run. I think you would want to have a run-heavy offense. I would imagine you're going to get a heavy dose of 2 tight end personnel. But at the same time, when you have receivers like KC Concepcion and Mario Craver, who have proven to be yard after catch machines, right? You want to find ways to get those guys the ball. So I think this is going to be more of what we expect to see out of the A&M offense this year in more challenging tests. Like, I think this is going to be run the ball, hit them over the top. But I wouldn't count out, you know, short, quick passes, allowing guys like Concepcion and Craver to just run, right? You know, those quick slants, things like that don't force Marcel Reed to overthink his decisions. Just kind of get the balls to your playmakers and let them work.
I totally agree with you that at the core, A&M wants to establish the run. But when I look at just the stats of the first 2 games where Marcel Reed is the leading rusher and leading carrier, like he has the most attempts, Are they just waiting to unleash Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens, or do you think there's a reason they haven't been unleashed? And is that a cause for concern that Marcel Reed is the leading rusher as well as passer?
Yeah, so Mike actually brought this up on the Aggie War Pod before A&M played UTSA, and I kind of, put a damper on the idea at the time, but his thought,
he poo-pooed it.
I did, and his thought was that Colin Klein and his offense would try to get Marcel Reed a rhythm, get him established, build some confidence. I think the past 2 weeks have been about that, about getting Marcel Reed confidence, not just in the passing game, but also in the rushing attack. Now I think you also have, Reuben Owens was injured for most of last year. Le'Veon Moss was injured at the end of last season. It also kind of gives those guys a chance to kind of knock some of the rust off without asking to do too much. I think now you get into it where, all right, we can't afford to hold anything back here. We have to go with what our best foot forward is. And I think that's going to be getting Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens going. And I think we saw a little bit out of that against with Le'Veon Moss against Utah State. But now I think he's going to be asked to do more.
I don't know if y'all are into illusions, like a Penn and Teller type deal, but it's always like a look over here. And that's don't pay attention to what I'm doing over on this side. That's what I thought A&M would do in the first 2 weeks. And like Notre Dame has to prepare for a running quarterback in a passing game that maybe it didn't expect to going into the season. So I think it was smart for the first 2 weeks to get that on tape, not only, for Marcel Reed's confidence and for the continuity with those wide receivers, but to also make Notre Dame kind of prepare for something that maybe, they thought it was going to be 65-35 run, and it hasn't been through the first 2 weeks. When A&M has the ball, what do you think the most important or biggest matchup key is going to be?
Yeah, for me, it's just the A&M offensive line against the Notre Dame defensive line. I think that's going to dictate everything in the trenches. I think I expected more out of the Notre Dame defensive line against Miami in week 1. And I think there is some things to kind of exploit. But at the same time, A&M needs to prove that they can really establish the run against a top team. And so that's why I'm going to be really honed in on this matchup whenever A&M has the ball. To see, if A&M can dictate the pace of play with their offensive line, it's going to be a good night for A&M. If not, this is going to be a challenge on the road in a tough environment.
Now, we know Marcel Reed's fine. As first reported by his dad, his health is okay. But is Trey Zune okay too? Do we expect Trey Zune to be out there? Because I know he is a huge part of their offensive line. He was a little banged up last week.
Yeah, and that's another piece that Elko covered in his presser. The guys that went down, Marcel Reed and Trey Zune, were available to return. But at that point, you kind of had the game in hand, and you didn't want to trot them out there if you didn't absolutely need them. So I expect Trey Zune and Marcel Reed to be back in the lineup perfectly fine come Saturday.
Jay Arnold's the offensive coordinator of Texas A&M. You're going into this game against Notre Dame. Early in the game, do you try to establish that rhythm with Marcel Reed and see if you can test a secondary? That's pretty good. I think Notre Dame's secondary is pretty good. Or do you just lean on kind of what in the run game, and hopefully you can get Reed in that passing game going on later?
Well, if I was the offensive coordinator, I'd probably be running the wing tee, but
my man
against this Notre Dame defense,
I kind of thought Colin Klein would too. He's gone a different way.
You might as well mix it in a little bit, just give him something else to think about. But I do think that, with this secondary and how good Notre Dame's secondary is, I think that's the strength of this team. Yes, I think A&M can create some mismatches just with personnel groupings and try to, throw some different looks at that secondary. But I still think as offensive coordinator, you have to go out and establish the run.
I feel like the reason they went into, you knew A&M needed to go in the portal to get wide receivers after week 1 of last year. Yeah. Just from being in the box against Notre Dame, is they could not get open. This will be a big test to see, because we feel like we've seen an improvement, but you do it against Notre Dame and it's okay, there has been a talent jump here.
Yeah, and I think that was, again, part of one of my things that I enjoyed about Mike Elko's tenure so far is it feels like he has a cohesive plan going into the portal and getting guys to address issues that they had. And like you said, the receiver position was, I think, the most glaring issue that the Aggies had from week one forward last year. And you do want to find ways to challenge that Notre Dame secondary. But I still worry about that matchup. This is going to be a tough environment. Marcel Reed has at least had some experience in tough environments in the SEC. I think you point to the South Carolina game, struggled a little bit in that one, right? Like, has he taken a step forward on the road? And that's why I would prefer to establish the run first, because I think running the ball travels, right? If you can run the ball, you can run the ball. It doesn't really matter as much with the environment. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because I do think that ultimately trying to throw the ball would be playing into the strength of this Notre Dame defense. And if you have a rushing attack that can get established, you should lean on that. Now, I could also see it where A&M doesn't really have a choice. They get behind early and they have to throw the ball just because of the problems that A&M has had defensively, right? A&M has been inconsistent. They've been good at times. I mean, seeing Cassius Howell have 3 sacks on one possession back to back to back is proof of concept of how good this defense can be. But they're not that good every time, or they haven't been yet. So if you allow Notre Dame to kind of capitalize on that, you could find yourself looking down the barrel of 7-0, 14-0 early on in this game, and you have to throw the ball. And you may not have a choice there. So it's definitely going to be something interesting to watch.
Yeah, Jay, I mean, you're the trust tree here. You can admit to us, like, how scared are you of Notre Dame's running backs, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, right now?
I'm terrified. I think that's about as good of a duo as you have in the country. I think Jeremiah Love is my favorite back in the country this year. We didn't see as much of him as I thought we would see against Miami. And again, that could have been a game flow type deal. And I think the Notre Dame offensive line struggled more against Miami than I expected. And that's another piece of it as well. But Jeremiah Love has the ability to break off a big play at any point. And I know this is a duo. It's just, I think Love scares me that much, just how good he is as a player, that you have to compensate for him. The flip side of that is you do have a freshman quarterback in CJ Carr, who I think honestly outperformed expectations on the road against Miami in week one. I think it was better than what a lot of people expected as a true freshman on the road. And now he comes home. So you would think that being at home, it's a little bit easier. Now A&M has to compensate for that aspect of the game as well.
It feels like somewhat of a mirror image football game. You got 2 defensive head coaches. They want to bully ball. They like their offensive lines. They trust the running game. It seems to me that the offense who can be balanced, that can at least present the threat of the passing game and have some consistency through the air, is going to win this football game. What are your thoughts on A&M's defense's ability to stop the Notre Dame passing attack?
I think it's going to come down to putting pressure on CJ Carr. And I think that's one thing that Miami really excelled at, was making things difficult. I think they struggled in pass pro at times. Some of those kick sets were things that, as a defensive lineman, I see, and I'm like, I would be able to bull rush this guy. He's super light in his feet. He's opening the door. But can A&M take advantage of that? Now, I think a guy in Cassius Howell is obviously a good enough player to do that. I think we've seen, again, this is an area that was addressed in the portal, the opposite side. You bring in guys like Cersei or Deion Hayes to try to complement Hal. You also have Rylan Kennedy out there. And then I look to the interior, right? I think Tyler Onyedem was the defensive line player of the week in week one, according to Mike Elko. Can you stuff that rushing attack and make sure that they do have to throw the ball? Because I think if A&M forces Notre Dame to throw the ball, that they can slow down that passing attack, although I worry about some of the discipline in the secondary.
You've mentioned watching the tape again on the Miami Notre Dame game, and I see you're thinking that, hey, maybe Texas A&M has a bit of an advantage on this offensive line from Notre Dame because they didn't pass protect as well. What are some of the other areas when you looked at that game from week one? What did you like about Miami's game plan against Notre Dame? And what do you think that A&M could replicate?
Yeah, I mean, it was creating havoc in the backfield and really making things difficult for a young quarterback. And I think A&M has to replicate that if they want to have a chance. It's going to be, I think you're going to get more exotics. I think you're going to be less vanilla on defense. I think you're going to try to create some different looks. I think you'll see some more disguised coverages, just things to really make CJ Carr question what he's seeing out there. Because if you can get a young quarterback second guessing himself, that gives you a huge edge in the passing game. And I think that's something that Miami did well.
Speaking of that Miami game, is it an advantage for Notre Dame or A&M? Like, would you have liked to play a big game? Like Notre Dame has an advantage because they played a big game and they've seen some of their flaws and they can adjust to that. Or is it an advantage for A&M that Notre Dame hasn't seen them have to game plan against a team that they had to throw everything at the wall? Like, is there no advantage there? Like, which team would you rather be in terms of like what the other team can see on tape?
I think there's advantages to both sides. I think, you go back to the iron sharpens iron colloquialism that all coaches talk about pretty much every day. And playing against a team like Miami on the road gives you a better glimpse of your flaws right away. At the same time, playing against teams that, yes, they're group of five, but I don't think they're necessarily bad group of five teams in UTSA and Utah State where you can kind of get tested, but still feel in control of the situation.
We'll see about the Roadrunners.
Yeah, I guess after the Texas State game, a little bit concerning there. And then you don't really know what you're going to get with Utah State either. But I look at Bronco Mendenhall as a guy who's probably going to have that program gelling later in the season. It's a chance, like I said, to kind of test some things out to see where your holes are. But again, have that control. The one thing that I'm really not a fan of for Notre Dame that I think this actually hurts them is having to bye this early on. Because I think you have that game against Miami and then you go straight into the bye. Whereas if you have that game against Miami and you have a game right after that, you can try to fix some of those errors in a game situation. You can make all the changes you want in practice, but you don't know that it's going to take effect until you see it out there in a game situation. I think having that early bye is actually a disadvantage for Notre Dame in this situation. You have the age-old question of rest versus rust. This early in the season, I don't think you're going to need that rest as much. I think it's much more likely to be a rust thing where some of the changes that you would have liked to have made and gotten implemented in a game, you have that bye week off and it's not in a game situation. So it's harder for those to take root.
When I look at the stakes of this game for both teams, I think if Notre Dame goes 0-2, losing to A&M, they have zero margin for error to get to the college football playoff and might already be out. And then for A&M, a loss in this game would kind of reset expectations. Craven wrote about it in his column today on TexasFootball.com. Are they going to be an 8-4, 9-3 team, or are they going to be an SEC championship level contender team? Who needs this game more, do you think, Jay?
I think there's no doubt in my mind that Notre Dame needs the game more because I look at this like, if Notre Dame loses, they don't have the benefit of going to a conference championship and getting that automatic berth. A&M theoretically, now I don't think they do this. I don't think they win the SEC, but A&M could theoretically lose this game to Notre Dame, win out in the SEC, and have no problem going to the national title or to the playoffs. Sorry, courtesy of an SEC championship. So I look at this is kind of do or die for Notre Dame. A&M has a little bit more leeway to play with.
I think it's more important for Notre Dame in 2025. It feels more important for A&M just as a program. Like Notre Dame's gone to a national championship game. You have a proof of concept there. Like Mike Elko is trying to plant that flag. And I brought this up earlier in the show, kind of in the main part of the show when we first kind of talked about it for 5 minutes. This feels like what Sark did at Texas when they went to Alabama in his year, and won that football game. And it was like, this is a new Texas. This is a team that can compete on the national level. It feels like A&M can do that with a win here. Do you think that they can go up there and win this football game?
I think they absolutely can. I don't want to discount the fact that, A&M has made a bunch of changes offensively, and that was part of the problem against Notre Dame last year, was just getting anything going on that side of the ball. Now Notre Dame has to account for a mobile quarterback versus, Connor Wigman, who probably wasn't at full health. You also have to account for receivers who are much more explosive, and we talked about that to start the show. Guys that can really create big plays after short catches. And then you also have to think about what A&M has done with bringing back so many offensive linemen, because I think part of the reason that we expect so much offensive line success in the rushing attack is this should theoretically be a more cohesive unit. These guys have played together for a while. They've had opportunities to gel. They should be able to go out there and establish the run. Now, will they be able to do it? I don't know 100%, but I think there's definitely a chance for A&M to go on the road, get this offense going, and knock off Notre Dame.
There's a chance, but will they? You dance around it, Jay.
Yeah, I know.
Here.
I tried to dance around it as much as possible. And I'm going to keep dancing with my prediction, because I'll say that Notre Dame wins, but A&M covers.
That's where Carter and I were too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So big weekend ahead for Texas A&M on the road against Notre Dame. Definitely the biggest game of the week. We appreciate Jay coming on. If you want to listen to a longer version of this, Jay and I do a podcast each week called the Aggie War Pod. That's where that intro came from earlier for that. That was an abbreviated version. We're recording Wednesday night, so when this podcast is out, we will have ours out. It'll be a full game preview. We look around the country as well. So, Jay, always appreciate the time, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Always a joy to talk Aggie football with y'all.